Behind these smiles and handshakes that took place in Beijing, there was a historic American defeat that all the media kept quiet about. Trump submits to China after this slap from Iran that turned everything upside down. And to cover up this disaster, the United States is now preparing a surprise military strike, but not in the Middle East, rather just 200 kilometers away from American soil. The target has been precisely identified and the operation is about to begin. So what exactly is happening? This is our topic today. We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Welcome today, God willing, to another episode of the Opinion series, which we always dedicate to keeping up with the latest developments and updates of these major conflicts happening in the world. And to begin, dear viewers, we will talk about the visit made by President Trump to China and the disappointment that Trump is experiencing today after the failure and the American plans that were associated with this visit. Trump left the Chinese capital, Beijing, with results that we can say are very limited, while on the other hand, President Xi Jinping achieved several victories and gains after hosting Trump. And as I told you in the previous episode, if we look at the photos and videos of this visit, we will see that there was a celebration for Trump, meaning because of who he is, but behind the scenes. In the closed sessions that took place as a result of this visit, there was a warning from China regarding the Taiwan issue and about 4 red lines that America should not cross. Trump did not comment on this Chinese warning. He remained reserved throughout the entire course of this visit. All his statements praised the meeting with the Chinese president and so on, to the extent that he halted an arms deal worth over $12 billion that was headed to Taiwan. And he said in one way or another that Taiwan cannot demand independence on the grounds that it has support from America. He said that the American army did not travel this distance of over 9,000 kilometers just to defend Taiwan or to get into a confrontation with a major power like China. So this is a new shift, showing how Trump, when he came to China, was defeated and exhausted from the war with Iran. He made major concessions to China and tried as much as possible not to provoke any hostility with China. He tried as much as possible to show the media, the international community, and the American public that his visit to China was successful by all standards. In statements, he said that the visit was a great success and that he made major deals and agreements to the point that he described the moment of this visit as a historic moment. Pay close attention. Among the supposed gains the Epstein alliance dangled before Trump in order to start this war against Iran was preparing the right conditions for this visit to China. They made him believe that the war against Iran, overthrowing the regime in Iran and achieving this victory against Iran would be easy and guaranteed, and would be accomplished in 4 days after capturing the supreme leader Ali Khamenei. And that this success in Iran would be a point of strength for Trump in negotiations with China when he visits China, meaning that China would then be weakened and forced to make concessions and so on, and thus the conditions for the visit would be set. In other words, the conditions would be prepared for Trump regarding China, making it easier for him to subdue China or force it to make concessions on many issues. But none of this plan materialized. The Iranian regime did not collapse, and the war on Iran stopped with a very significant strategic and historic victory for Iran. Even the goal of creating disruptions in China's oil supplies was not achieved. This made Trump travel to China while he was defeated. I mean, he was the one who was weak during this visit, not China. He was the one who made concessions, not China. There were trade agreements signed during this visit, but they did not constitute any concessions from China at all. these agreements benefited China, and previously there was no objection from them to implementing this agreement. For example, China would buy agricultural products from America, meaning they would once again purchase these agricultural products from the United States, for China to buy Boeing airplanes from America, to invest in American industries, or to allow some companies to enter the Chinese market, and so on. This was not something the Chinese side rejected. In fact, these agreements are not antagonistic at all, or a quarter of what America was hoping for, a quarter of what America wanted from China, and what it was planning if it had actually won this war about the two parties. The truth is that China is the one that came out victorious in this trade war with America. I mean, if America was blocking chips from China, China was also blocking rare natural resources from America. Today, during this visit, this trade war was temporarily suspended until an unspecified date, maybe until a final agreement is reached. And in reality, until another battle begins, a coming battle we'll discuss today. This is so that everyone knows how the Iran card turned for Trump, from a card he saw as a winning one to a losing one, leading Trump and America to counterproductive results. Pay close attention that when America issued a statement saying it had agreed with China on the need to open the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranian response came very quickly. We talked about this in the previous episode, which is allowing some Chinese cargo ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, of course, this ban continued for the rest of the other ships, American ships, and the ships of America's partners and allies, and so on. So Trump actually went to China, meaning he was frustrated and defeated, unable to postpone this visit to another time because there was no way to do so, as he was completely convinced that there is no way to defeat Iran, there is no chance to defeat Iran, meaning there is no way to turn the equation around again in order to pressure China and force it to make concessions and so on. So what did Trump do during this visit? Did he pretend to be obedient to China? He pretended to be obedient to China and fond of China, and that he wanted friendship and to open the door for cooperation and so on. The Spanish newspaper El Mundo said that Trump's visit to China was a tactical defeat for the Americans. And it said that the real strategic partnership for China is the one that will begin next Tuesday. When Russian President Putin visits China, it's said that this visit is the one that will reveal and clarify to everyone China's real priority. What you saw in the pictures and videos is totally different and unrelated to reality. So Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araqi visited China, and a week later Trump visited China, and then about 2 or 3 days after that Putin visited China. All these visits carry meanings and implications, but the major shift that happened in this last war, I mean between Iran and the Epstein alliance, was at the core of all 3 of these visits. There is an American senator named Rombol who said that America was defeated in this war against Iran. Even though Iran's military budget does not exceed 1% of the US Army's budget, 1%, he said that even if we combined the military budgets of all the countries in the region, they would not surpass the US Army's budget. In the end, just one country with a budget equal to only 1% of the US Army's budget. It inflicted all this crushing defeat, I mean on America. Iran destroyed 70% of the military bases in the region. It destroyed dozens of radars worth billions of dollars, shot down dozens of drones, and so on. I mean, all these losses with what? With weapons that cost only thousands of dollars? The American magazine The Atlantic said that America's defeat in this war is completely different from its previous defeats in the Vietnam War and the Afghanistan War. And the difference here is what? It's that this defeat against Iran cannot be fixed and it cannot be hidden at all. This means that this war has revealed that America is no longer trustworthy at all, because it has shown that it is incapable of finishing what it started. It started a war for a specific goal, and in the end, what happened? It stopped the war without completing these tasks. without achieving the intended goal of this war. And more than that, in the end, it left the situation in the region changing today in favor of Iran, with what is happening today in the Strait of Hormuz and so on. So it left its allies in the region to face this new fate alone. For decades, America has treated this region, the Gulf region, as its own strategic sphere of influence, and it has always reinforced this influence with its successful military interventions in the region. Like its intervention in Iraq, its overthrow of the regime, the grim fate that Saddam Hussein faced at the time. These things recently made a group of Gulf leaders always fear that their fate would be the same as Saddam Hussein's. So there was absolute dominance by America. Whatever America said is what happened. But this time, America perhaps wanted to repeat the same experience that happened in Iraq, to strengthen its influence in the region again, and to send a message of deterrence to all the countries south of Iraq. And at the same time, it gained concessions from China, as I explained, but this time the results were the opposite. It found willpower, and it found strong resilience from Iran, and it found good military preparedness, and it also found clever exploitation of the ongoing developments. So this was the predicament that Trump is experiencing right now, exactly at this moment. It's clear that after this defeat in Iran, America is now trying to look for a victory, even if it's somewhere else. Why? Is it to cover up the defeat with a victory? It's clear that Trump has only one option left: for America to withdraw from this confrontation, to fully meet the Iranian conditions, and perhaps also to secure a guarantee to halt the Iranian nuclear program for the next 20 years. Maybe Iran will give up on this, maybe, but it's important that the Iranian conditions are fully met. But in order to make it seem that America has surrendered, or even so that America doesn't appear to have surrendered in the end and met the Iranian demands and conditions, it will carry out another military operation in a different area and against a different opponent. It will be a successful operation with a high guarantee, and thus the success of this operation will cover up the failure it suffered in Iran. And I believe this operation is now imminent, and I think it will be exactly in Cuba, because the American newspaper, the New York Times, actually said that there is a very high possibility of launching a special military operation in Cuba. It will be similar to the Venezuela operation, where one of Cuba's top leaders, Raúl Castro, the brother of the revolutionary leader in Cuba, Fidel Castro, will be arrested. Although he currently does not hold any position, America accuses him of being responsible for the incident of 2 American planes being shot down in 1996 when he was serving as Minister of Defense at the time. And of course, there are other charges like drug trafficking and so on. These charges are already prepared by America, and if this scenario happens, it will be similar to the Venezuela scenario, exactly like when America also had charges ready for Nicolas Maduro. So this time, it's clear that America will not arrest the president of Cuba, because they know this won't put any pressure on the Cuban regime, while if they arrest Raúl Castro, he is now over 90 years old. It would be a blow to the communist regime in Cuba, and as a result, this regime would give in and meet America's demands, which include shutting down the Russian and Chinese surveillance and intelligence bases on the island of Cuba, which are, of course, used to monitor American communications. Then, after that, opening up the Cuban economy to American companies, and thus achieving the Monroe Doctrine's goal of making the entire American continent a backyard for the United States, an area of American influence. They really want to achieve a victory in Cuba by any means necessary, whether through threats, pressure, or military action. Now, it is letting the American newspapers talk about this scenario as if it is sending a warning to the president of Cuba and the Cuban regime. Submit to our demands now, or your leader will be arrested, your top leader, just like Maduro was arrested. But in the end, of course, if they don't submit in Cuba, and it's clear that they won't, So Trump might give the order for a military operation because Trump is now in desperate need of a victory. He needs a win. He's desperate to cover up the failure that happened in Iran. And the military operation in Cuba might be an easy one, and it could be very successful because the situation in Cuba, as everyone knows, is very difficult today. Because of the naval blockade imposed by America, the country is still without energy supplies, and there are still frequent and continuous power outages. The only country that managed to break this naval blockade was Russia, when it succeeded in bringing in about 100,000 tons of Russian oil. But this amount ran out by the end of last April, so the crisis returned again in the country. Today, the country is suffering without diesel, gasoline, electricity, or anything else. There were also public protests in the capital, Havana. The important thing is that the situation is very serious. There is a fact. America has drawn up appropriate charges against Castro, including drug trafficking, as I mentioned. The American newspapers say that the Venezuela operation will be repeated in Cuba. Trump really needs such a success. He needs a successful military operation. He needs a victory. And Cuba is not like Iran militarily. It's not like Iran geographically, and it's not the same as Iran either. Geographically, Cuba is only 200 kilometers away from American territory, specifically from the state of Florida, while it is far from Russia and China. That means thousands of kilometers. And it is a small island about the size of Portugal, exhausted economically and socially. So it's very easy to attack it militarily, except in one case, if the Cuban army might be preparing surprises for America or something else. Up until now, we don't know the level of this Cuban army, what could prepare them for that. And of course, the question remains, how will China respond as well? How will Russia respond then if America carries out this military operation? So now President Trump has given in to China. He fulfilled China's demands to a very large extent during this visit, but he also invited President Xi to visit America next November, before the elections in America. Therefore, Trump must be planning to compensate for this defeat in Iran with strategic victories in other areas before this visit, so that he can impose America's demands on China. So now we will see how things will develop in the coming hours and days. That's all for now, dear viewers. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the button. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. See you next time.